Tony the Pool Boy. Episode 3. Who is on my door? I heard a loud banging on my door early in the morning, which startled me awake. My heart pounded in rhythm with the insistent knocks. I hurried to the door, my curiosity mingling with a hint of dread. As soon as I opened it, my eyes widened in shock. Standing before me was a tall, dark man, well-built and dressed in an impeccable mafia suit. Behind him, a few feet away, were several heavily armed men standing by a luxurious jeep. "Good morning, Mr. Tony Smith," the man said in a deep, authoritative voice. "I am Mr. Anderson, your father's personal bodyguard. Your father has reassigned me to you. I work for you now, Mr. Tony." I was left speechless, my mind racing. I said to myself, all this for me? But Dad, this is too much. Mr. Anderson interrupted my thoughts. "Sir, you have a meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. this morning, and it's almost 10. I glanced at the wall clock. It was 9:45 a.m. I rushed to take a quick shower, still processing the new development. As I stood under the stream of water, I reflected on the lessons I had learned during my humility training. I had grown comfortable with my new identity as an ordinary pool boy, just another face in the crowd. Today, I decided, would be no different. I dressed simply, choosing a pair of neatly ironed jeans and a nice shirt. I was ready to leave when Mr. Anderson stopped me. "Sir," he said, "I don't think it's a good idea to attend the meeting dressed like this." I smiled at him, understanding his concern but firm in my decision. "It's fine, Mr. Anderson. I don't feel like dressing too seriously today." He saw the determination in my eyes and knew I wouldn't budge. "If you insist, sir," he conceded. We got into the car and drove off. The ride was silent, but my mind was buzzing with thoughts about the meeting and my resolve to stay grounded. When we arrived at the meeting location, a prestigious hotel downtown, I noticed the looks of curiosity and subtle judgment from the well-dressed guests as I walked in. Mr. Anderson led me to a private conference room where several executives were already seated. As I entered the room, the murmurs grew louder. I took a deep breath and introduced myself. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Tony Smith." Surprised looks brewed on everyone's faces, with some mocking me to my face. "He must be dreaming," some of them said. With a look of disgust, the CEO, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Smith, are you sure you're at the right meeting?" I smiled, remaining calm. "Yes, I am. Let's get started." Everyone stared in amusement as I proceeded. The meeting commenced, and despite the initial skepticism, I managed to hold my own stand. I presented my ideas confidently, and soon the focus shifted from my attire to my insights, leaving everyone impressed. After the meeting, as we were leaving, Mr. Anderson couldn't help but express his surprise. "Sir, you handled that incredibly well. But why do you insist on this disguise?" I looked at him, my voice steady. "Mr. Anderson, I need to remember who I am at my core. This humility is not a phase. It's a part of me now. Wealth is temporary, but character is lasting." He nodded, respect evident in his eyes. "Understood, sir. Your father will be proud." We drove back to my modest apartment, and I felt a sense of satisfaction. I had managed to stay true to myself despite the pressures of my father's wealth and influence. This journey was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next. Just as I arrived at my apartment, I got a phone call from my sister Lucy. "Hello, Lucy. Tony, where are you? You need to come back home now. It's urgent," she said with a trembling voice. "What seems to be the problem this time, Lucy?" I asked with a worried look on my face. "Tony, I can't talk much on the phone. Please come to the family house now." She hangs up the phone, leaving Tony confused in deep thoughts. End of episode 3. Tony the Pool Boy, episode 4. "Lucy, what happened?" Tony rushes out of his apartment, his face a mix of concern and determination as he gets into the car. When I arrived at the family house, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with an eerie silence that seemed to echo through the grand hallways. I found Lucy sitting on the living room sofa, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Lucy, what's going on?" I asked, rushing to her side. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Tony, it's Dad. He's gone," she managed to say between sobs. The world seemed to stop. My father, the man who had taught me so much, was gone. The weight of his loss hit me like a tidal wave, and I felt a sharp pang of grief in my chest. I sank into the sofa next to Lucy, unable to hold back my own tears. In the days that followed, the house was filled with relatives and friends coming to pay their respects. Each condolence brought a new wave of sorrow, but it was the memories that hit the hardest. Lucy and I took on the responsibility of arranging the funeral. She handled the logistical details while I focused on making sure everything reflected the respect and love we had for our father. We leaned on each other for strength, sharing stories and comforting one another through the darkest moments. I realized how much Lucy and I had depended on our father's guidance. Now it was up to us to carry on his legacy. The pain was almost unbearable, but I knew we had to be strong for each other and for our family. The funeral was a solemn affair, attended by many who had known and respected our father. As I stood by his casket, memories flooded my mind, his stern yet kind words, his laughter, his unwavering support. Lucy stood beside me, her hand in mine, as we said our final goodbyes. After the funeral, we returned home, the emptiness of the house a stark reminder of our loss. Lucy and I sat in the living room, the silence between us filled with unspoken grief. "Tony," she began softly, "Dad believed in you so much. He wanted you to learn humility, but he also wanted you to embrace who you are. Don't let his lessons go to waste." I nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know, Lucy. I'll honor his memory by staying true to myself and the values he instilled in us." She squeezed my hand, a small smile breaking through her tears. "We'll get through this together, Tony." Losing our father was the hardest thing I've ever faced, but it also brought Lucy and me closer. In our shared grief, we found strength and resolve. Our father's legacy lived on in us, and I was determined to make him proud. The days following the funeral were a blur of emotions. Lucy and I found solace in each other as we navigated our grief. The house, once filled with laughter and life, now felt eerily quiet. One evening, as we sat in the living room, Lucy spoke up. "Tony, we need to talk about the future. Dad's passing changes everything." I nodded, knowing she was right. "I know, Lucy. We need to figure out how to manage everything from the business to the estate." She looked at me with determination. "Dad trusted us to handle this. We have to rise to the occasion for him and for ourselves." Over the next few weeks, Lucy and I threw ourselves into our new responsibilities. We met with lawyers, financial advisors, and company executives, working tirelessly to ensure everything was in order. The process was exhausting, but it also gave us a sense of purpose. As we worked, I couldn't help but think about the lessons my father had taught me during my humility training. Despite the wealth and power now at my fingertips, I remained committed to staying grounded and true to myself. One morning, while reviewing some documents in my father's study, I found a letter addressed to me. With trembling hands, I wondered, what could be the content of this letter? So I decided to open it and read. End of episode 4. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell for the next episode.